This is Up Close. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. We've just passed the All-Star break in the Major League Baseball season, and in this week's episode, we're offering a look at how baseball influences and is influenced by broader American culture, including the moral dilemmas and various conflicts the sport reveals. One of the defining moral dilemmas of baseball has been the expulsion of Pete Rose for gambling. Baseball's all-time leader in hits, he'd be a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame based on his on-the-field performance alone. But he's banned from baseball, even as players who've used steroids in the recent era aren't. Talking about Pete Rose, an American dilemma, is Sports Illustrated Associate Managing Editor Kostya Kennedy. For pop culture historian and journalist Dan Epstein, there's no period in baseball better worth remembering than the 70s. And especially in 1976, he argues, baseball came to represent a changing American spirit, at the same time that the game itself changed dramatically. His book is Stars and Strikes, Baseball in America in the Bicentennial Summer of '76. But first, here's my interview with Kostya Kennedy. There have been countless people who've said that baseball is America's religion, that we build for its stadia and statuary. And if baseball is America's religion, then its great moral controversy is, or at least was, the question of Pete Rose.
Right. No, I think that's fair. It is a type of, the church of baseball, as it's called. And I think that it's seen that way. But, for immigrants, too, when they come here and they see baseball, a lot of Jewish immigrants, certainly, if you could understand baseball and be part of it on the street and part of the lingua franca of baseball, it really meant you were belonging to America in a way. I think that was true in the 1800s and certainly around World War II and all that. So it's certainly all that. It's true about the stature of baseball. And the Rose dilemma is at the center of so much of that.
But as with so many major moral dilemmas for various communities, this one is very heavily fueled by some misinformation, where a lot of people who defend him don't know the full extent of what he did, and a lot of the people who would condemn him perhaps assume some of the wrong things too.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's something that I really found out in working on the book. One of the big issues is whether or not he bet on the team to lose, for example, which there's no evidence that he did. We can never say for sure that he didn't, but there was a huge investigation into this. They reinvestigated it. By they, I mean baseball. The FBI separately was looking at Pete because of interstate gambling rules, and nobody ever came up with any evidence that he bet on the team to lose. So that's an important distinction. Nonetheless, what we alluded to before, some people think, oh, so what if he bet on his team to win? I bet every time I play golf. Not me personally, but people think that, I bet when I play golf, I bet on my football team on the weekend. What's the big deal? They don't realize the sort of extent to which he was betting. And so thousands of dollars every night, and the kind of people that he had coming into the clubhouse and being around the team, sort of giving a beachhead for these gambling types in the game of baseball, and just how dangerous it was. I mean, one thing, I do think that Pete deserves a chance to be on the ballot, to be voted on, and we can determine his fate that way. But baseball had really no choice but to do what they did.
Right, and within that controversy, you have, on the one hand, steroid era players whom we know did steroids to achieve certainly some of their late career statistical achievements, who are on the Hall of Fame ballot but not getting in. Mm-hmm. But Pete Rose never on the Hall of Fame ballot. And you speak to some people and some legends who are okay with that and some who are not okay with that.
Yeah, it is pretty split, and I think that the Hall of Fame, the body of Hall of Famers are split just like general baseball fans and general public are split on how they feel about Pete. So as you say, he wasn't even allowed on the ballot, and that was something that was forced upon him 2 years after he was banned. So that you get guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens who were involved in steroids and are now coming on the ballot, and they're getting about 35-40% of the vote. You need 75 to get in. So clearly some people think, okay, they were great players anyway, and if they took the drug, they took the drug, but still they had to hit the ball, they had to pitch it. And other people say, no way. Nobody hits the way Barry Bonds hit after the age of 37. It's preposterous, and it violated the game, and there's no way I'd vote for him. And that is sort of reflected in the vote. Pete, we just don't know. Some people might vote for him, some people might not. They just never had a chance. Pete is the only player in baseball history to be denied a chance who would have appeared on the ballot but didn't.
And now, baseball in that bicentennial summer of 1976 with Dan Epstein. What's fascinating about this book is you decide, I'm going to look at the bicentennial year in America through the lens of baseball. And baseball is both relevant to everything and reflective of everything that's going on in these tumultuous times. And those things are then brought back into baseball.
And I think the 70s in general were this period where American popular culture and baseball really collide in a way that they had never done before. And 1976 is really the most intense year in terms of, that sense of collision and a sense of transition in the sport. That is also, there's transition going on in America, and politically, culturally, musically, and all set against the bicentennial, which is this celebration of 200 years of the American experiment.
Yeah, it's the last time when economics of baseball are really that nutty. You're talking about these relatively low millions of dollars, baseball teams being sold for $12 million or so, which in 1976 dollars, it's only grown about 4 times after
right,
inflation.
that's like
so
50 million maybe.
And there's this kind of era of innocence that's quickly closing on baseball as the real economics of what to come are closing in.
Well, and you also see in 1976 Ted Turner by the Atlanta Braves for, I believe, $10 million. The deal was that he only had to pay $1 million a year for the next 10 years to buy the Braves. And what's interesting there is that one of the reasons that teams are, thought to be worth so much now is because of all the cable rights. And up until Ted Turner bought the Braves, the prevailing wisdom was, don't put your team on television because then people won't go to the ballpark. And Turner, visionary that he was, realized, no, if we put the team on TV every night, it becomes this sort of part of the community. People become more interested in it, and it will also help my TV station grow to something bigger.
And within all of that, you find kind of connections with that, how it comes back to baseball. And for example, the end of the Revolutionary period, there was an attempted flag burning in the middle of Dodger Stadium. There were black players deciding, how to exist in baseball after the Revolutionary period, 20 years after Jackie Robinson broke in. And there was a whole politics around even how free players were overall with the battle for free agents.
Right, and 1976 is the year that the reserve clause gets struck down in the courts, which is huge in terms of baseball's economics and in terms of the way that teams are, forever after would be built and constructed, and players up till this point had no real control over their destinies. They, if they were signed with a team, whatever the team wanted to pay them within limits, they had to accept it. And so in 1976, you see the players win their war for independence, and the end of the season is marked by the first ever free agent draft, where players who have been on the same team for, in some cases as many as 10 years, are now able to kind of step out onto the open market and, receive whatever the market will bear. And suddenly, guys are going from making, $25,000 a year to $200,000 a year, and which is huge at the time. And it really, everything about baseball's economics today can be traced back to that moment where the reserve clause is struck down for good in 1976.
That's all for this week's abbreviated web episode of Up Close. A reminder, you can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish channel on cable, or listen to the full audio as a podcast available on iTunes and your favorite podcast player. The Jewish channel is available on cable: Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.